A short while ago, President Trump wrapped up a press conference with Italy's prime minister at the White House. He fielded a number of questions on Iran, healthcare, ISIS, and more. Here's what he said off the start about North Korea.
Do you believe that the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, is mentally unstable?
As far as North Korea is concerned, we are in very good shape. We're building our military rapidly. We're in very good position. We're going to see what happens. I can't answer your question on stability. I hope the answer is a positive one, not a negative one. But hopefully that will be something that gets taken care of. I have great respect for the president of China. I actually told him, I said, you'll make a much better deal on trade if you get rid of this menace or do something about the menace of North Korea, because that's what it is. It's a menace right now. So we'll see what happens.
So there's President Trump, Greg, utilizing some American leverage on trade to get China to act. But you have to imagine that the Italian prime minister is like, what am I, chopped liver? Nobody ever asked about Italy.
Well, it's because, you know, it's America. By the way, I like how Trump talks about China. It's like he's like at a bar with his buddy, and he's like, "You've got to get out of this relationship. It's just got to go. It's like, you like it or not, you know, if
you have to kick her out of the house,
or him."
Okay.
And who cares? I mean, who cares if he's mentally unstable? We have to respond and react to North Korea's actions. They just released a statement where they're planning to launch a super mighty preemptive strike.
That's what they call it.
That's what they call it. It was from their official North Korea paper. It sounds like something that the mighty Morphin Power Rangers might do. And who knows, maybe that's his favorite show, and he dresses up as one. But it's just like, the problem with North Korea is that it's comical until it isn't.
Right.
It's like we think we talk about him. He was in, you know, it was obviously, you know, a plot point of Comedy Central. What was it? South Park. We think it's funny, but at some point it's not going to be funny anymore. And when is that point happening?
Yeah. And certainly, of course, not funny. The humanitarian situation, Kimberly, is terrible, but that is not our initial problem. The biggest problem is trying to prevent the nuclear weapon proliferation.
Yeah, and that should be, you know, really at the foremost in terms of concerns for the United States from a national security perspective. I mean, really especially, and I think you have to be concerned as to whether or not the stability of Kim Jong-un, because we're trying to work with someone in a rational way to say, listen, it's in no one's best interest if you continue to act in a menacing way by making these threats against the United States, by test-firing missiles, and repeatedly putting us in a position where then, you know, we're forced to act. Now, obviously, to me, it seems that this is really on the top of the president's list, and I think in the front of his mind in terms of dealing with this and working on it. And so far, so good in terms of our relationship with China and President Xi. So, I mean, I look forward to them working cooperatively, because we don't need more mishaps like we had last week with the test fire, the, you know, misfiring. Eventually, they're going to figure out how to be able to overcome that roadblock that seems to have cyber befallen them.
Bob, is there a historical example where there was a leader that might have been considered mentally unstable that we had to deal with in the past? Maybe that didn't have nuclear weapons, but that the United States had to confront?
Be careful, Bob.
There's so many of them.
I have a good one.
I mean, I think probably one that was fairly substantial to us was Marcos in the Philippines.
Right.
I was there in the Peace Corps, and he was nutting in a fruitcake. And they still got him. They still got him embalmed someplace in his hometown. He's fallen apart, but outside of that. But look, let's go back to North Korea for a second. North Korea has, I
was just throwing you a bone.
I appreciate that. North Korea has, in many ways, changed a lot of our foreign policy emphasis. I mean, this was Donald Trump not but 3 months ago saying China was the great currency manipulator. Now, they're our friends if they'll cut a good deal and help us with the North Koreans. At the same time, you remember that parade with all those new missiles they had in North Korea? You know whose trucks those were? They were Chinese trucks carrying those nuclear weapons. So and new ones, by the way. So I don't know. I really don't trust China. I still believe that China's the single biggest national security threat to the United States in the long run of any country.
Well, maybe that is, but do you think that's possibly changing, though? I mean, even if you think that, I mean, having a better relationship with China is good?
I think they are, and I think they're...
I was actually asking Harry.
Oh, me? Oh, so I think this. I woke up this morning. I heard this that Xi Jinping said that they're going to lean on North Korea. They're going to hold back some exports. They're going to restrict trade to North Korea. And at that moment, I realized it's game over for North Korea now. They are out of friends. They're out of allies. They're surrounded now. China on the north, South Korea on the south, Japan to the, I believe it's the east. No, I'm sorry, the east, yeah. And they have water to the west. They are now being surrounded, and they're going to get squeezed out of relevance. But all because what you pointed out, 3 weeks ago or 3 months ago, Donald Trump said China was a currency manipulator and decided not to declare them that when he was president, instead negotiate with them. And what did they get? They get for the first time, a Chinese president saying, North Korea, cut it out. We haven't heard that in, I don't know, decades. I mean, there's been some back and forth. China typically, on a great day, says, we're not getting involved. Now they're leaning on North Korea. Kim Jong-un has to be going, ooh, I'm all out of friends. And all this commentary about, yeah, but preemptive strike, they can't even get a missile off the ground.
Well, we don't know if they're leading or not. I mean, they say the right things. China's always saying that.
They're leaned on them. They said they were going to restrict oil exports to them, which is they almost get 100% of the oil into North Korea from China, and they said they're going to restrict trade to China. That is a monumental change, and that's all because Donald Trump made the deal with China.
Well, we could argue about that, but I would argue that it was right after that North Korea announced they were going to launch another missile.
Well, we'll have to see what happens. And meanwhile, there's other hot spots around the world that President Trump talked about. He was asked about ISIS. Here's what he said.
I do see a role in getting rid of ISIS. We're being very effective in that regard. We are doing a job with respect to ISIS that it has not been done anywhere near the numbers that we're producing right now. It's a very effective force we have. We have no choice. I see that as a primary role, and that's what we're going to do, whether it's in Iraq or in Libya or anywhere else. And that role will come to an end at a certain point, and we'll be able to go back home and rebuild our country, which is what I want to do.
Like a good, sober assessment, right, Greg?
Yeah, you know, what can you say in these situations like, oh, boy, we're in trouble? No, he said that, but it's right. He says the right things. They're very blunt. He's very blunt about this topic because he understands that it's common sense. It's like you don't need a PhD to understand ISIS. All you have to do is understand life, and that we have no choice when we're faced with evil. And I think for a long time we've been in this kind of academic wilderness about certain topics where we have to sit and philosophize and talk about certain kinds of long-term ramifications. In this case, we just know that we have to exterminate a vicious, disgusting bug. And the good news is what I've noticed, and maybe that we don't see the videos anymore. And I'd like to think that the people who used to make those videos are dead. But the bad news, you will see these more frequent, smaller attacks, like perhaps if this one in Paris turns out to be a terrorist attack, in which any weapon that is available will be used. There will be more frequent, probably less intense, but you will not see these videos. I think the reduction of these videos says something.
I thought that was interesting because we did cover a lot of those, Eric, over the past year or so, and they have been quiet. I'm not asking. I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah, exactly. We have to be careful.
Not egging them on.
We're not declaring it all clear, and we've beaten ISIS. But the point of what we've learned over the last few months is that ISIS's financial sources of income were being strangled. The oil that they were stealing throughout Syria and throughout northern Iraq, that they were stealing and selling into Syria and different parts of Turkey, was being cut off. So when you cut off the financing, you know what they are, Greg? They're like bloggers, ISIS bloggers, who say, you know, I'm not getting paid for this anymore. Right. I'm going to go find something else to do. And I think that may be what we're seeing.
But in January, Bob, there were some folks that work in sort of the national security world who said that President Obama was actually pretty effective in doing a lot on ISIS, but he wouldn't talk about it. He didn't want to take any credit for it. Why would that be?
This goes back to his fear about alienating Muslims, which I've never quite understood. But leaving that aside, there is, at this stage of the game, ironically, by the way, the guy who did those pictures was a British guy. You remember that?
Yes.
Who used to do the soundtrack? I hope he's hanging by his thumbs in the Tower of London right now.
Glad you said thumbs.
Yeah, but well, I could have said other
yes.
Family show. But what's happened now is that the big efforts like 9/11 and others are pretty much gone now. They don't have the capability to do it because Eric said they don't have the money to do it. They don't have the organization to do it. So now what happens is you've got these independent people spread out all over the world that they have indoctrinated, and they're doing it. And that's maybe in some ways would be worse.
Last word to you, Kimberly.
Yeah, so what Bob is hitting on there is a really important point in the difficulty in fighting radical Islamic jihad, because you have these different splinter groups, you have individuals that are acting alone, but nevertheless inspired or influenced or indoctrinated all around. It makes it very difficult to be able to isolate, detect, and stop them. And that's kind of the frightening aspect of it, because just when you think that you've made inroads and you haven't seen as many of their videos, then they'll strike somewhere, you know, in Europe, and they will look for the most vulnerable path and the softest targets to be able to ratchet up another win for themselves, because they do care about how it looks to the rest of the world, and that really hits at their ability to recruit.
One last one?
Yeah, very quickly. ISIS has two main sources of income. One is the stealing of the oil and selling it, and the other one is they charge fees,
Ransom.
like ransom and fees. So that's why when you take a city back like Raqqa, or you take a city like Raqqa, or a city back from ISIS control, they lose a lot of income because they're not able to extort money from the business owners and the homes of people for protection. So the ground game in ISIS is big. I don't mean boots on the ground game. I mean just taking the territory.
It's also not clear who's really in charge. I mean,
we have to go. All right. Fine.